I am making a coffee cake today for a friend who's not feeling well, and it's just a nice gesture to take something off of her plate as well as her family's because while she's sick, they probably have other things they'd like to think about. I like to make coffee cakes always when I'm bringing food to a friend because it can serve double duty for Karina's husband. They can eat it as a dessert, or if he needs to, in a pinch, serve it to the children for breakfast. Coffee cake may not be the healthiest breakfast, but like nobody's going to serve chocolate cake to their kid for breakfast. So that's why I always do coffee cake. So let's get started. This is a multi-layer cake. This is a 1/3 cup, so I use 2 1/3 cups of flour, 2 1/3 cups of sugar. I use about a teaspoon of cinnamon. Yes, you can omit this if you're not a cinnamon fan, but this is our streusel layer, which does traditionally have cinnamon in it, and I really think you'd be missing out if you didn't have that. Next, we have a super cold stick of butter, an entire stick of butter, and as you see, I chopped it up sideways, I chopped it up long ways, and then I also chopped it up like a third way. I don't know how else to say that. And so I get these little tiny cubes. I'm going to put about a tablespoon worth of the tiny cubes in at a time, and then I will mix up with the flour, and that way all sides of the little tiny cubes of butter will get coated with the flour. I do want to move quickly here because I want the butter to stay nice and cold. And of course, my hands are impeccably clean. And we've talked about what impeccably clean hands mean in the kitchen. It means you've washed your hands and you have used a nail brush, ideally. And that is especially the case if you have long nails or acrylic nails. In this case, I would definitely not recommend this activity if you have long or acrylic nails. I'd say use gloves or just don't get your hands in it. And also no jewelry on while we're cooking, please. No jewelry. All right, so this is going to go into a Ziploc bag and go into the freezer. This is streusel topping, and anything that you would like to put streusel topping on that's like a baked good, you can just keep that in the fridge for like a month. It's perfect. So for the rest of the cake, and this is actually the next day you're seeing this, I need flour, I need sugar, I need 2 blocks of cream cheese at room temperature. I left those out overnight. I need 4 eggs that were left out overnight. I need baking powder. I need salt. I need a lemon. I need a stick of butter that was left out overnight. My lemon has already been washed, by the way. Now, if you don't have lemon, yes, you can use lemon extract, but I'm not using lemon extract. I just showing it to you. I like the lemon. You also see I have vanilla extract. You can use the fake vanilla. It's just fine. I have whole milk. Now that was not left out overnight. That was just came out of the fridge. And then I also have blackberry preserves, which are optional, but I think it makes a big difference. And then I have most of a container of strawberries, most of a container of blackberries. Your tools that you'll need for this are 2 9-inch springform pans. This is a double recipe because if you're going to make this for somebody else, you should at least have it for yourself. We need measuring cups. We need at least 2 bowls for measuring, a spatula, and you may have seen an offset spatula there before. And I do recommend, if you don't have a stand mixer, a hand mixer is going to be a lifesaver with this cake. It's very hard to get light and fluffy cakes if you don't have a hand mixer. Hand mixers can be, there's like a Hamilton Beach brand at Walmart that's like $12. And so, really anybody can do it, but it's going to take a lot of load off of your plate if you have a hand mixer. I don't know how cooks did it in the past before electric tools. Yeah, and again, this offset spatula, this is a Wilton one. I think it was like $12 or $15, but really you can get them online for like $1, plastic ones. And they may not be quite as good, but they'll really help get the job done. So you don't always have to have expensive tools. These 9-inch springform pans that you see, I got those at Walmart. You don't, my measuring cups are from the dollar store. Okay, now this is another optional thing. I am going to put my springform pans each on a cookie sheet, and that's just going to make it easier for me to take them, like to put them in and take them out of the oven. My oven is preheating to 350 degrees. I like to preheat my oven as quickly as possible. It allows for the most even heat distribution. Okay, so in a bowl, I have my 2 sticks of cream cheese. They are really soft, and I just beat those just for a few seconds to kind of get some aeration in there. And I mixed in half a cup of sugar, and I beat that in. I put in about a teaspoon of vanilla bean paste. This is kind of expensive. If you've seen my other recipes, I definitely do not always use that. Sometimes I use vanilla extract. Sometimes I use fake vanilla flavor, and I promise you it's going to be really good. Either way. Now I'm scraping my entire lemon. My zester was in the dishwasher, so that's why I'm using a peeler. Notice that there's a little bit of white on the peel, and that part is called the pith, and it's a little bit bitter. So I also used my peeler to kind of scrape away as much of that white part, the pith, as I could, and then I chopped it up as finely as I could, and the entire zest of 1 lemon went into this cream cheese filling. And you could use just the lemon extract if you want. Okay, well, I guess I lied. I forgot I did use a tiny splash of lemon extract. Now, the purpose of using the lemon zest and the lemon, maybe a little splash of lemon juice or the lemon extract, it's going to brighten up the cream cheese. This is a rich cake, and sometimes the richness can be a little bit annoying unless you have a bright zest flavor, which can kind of cut that. Orange zest would also do the trick here. All right, now I am mixing in. I have 2 eggs that need to go in here, so I'm mixing them in one at a time. It's going to take a minute to fully incorporate each egg. Here's our second egg. Okay, and this is not an exact measurement, I'm going to mix in 4 heaping teaspoons of flour. And I like to do this step by hand with this cream cheese filling layer, just because a hand mixer can kind of warm up the ingredients too much, and I really need this to be cold. So I just mix that in really, really well. Now this bowl, it can go in with the spatula, that's fine. It's going to go covered into the fridge, because I want it to be cold when it goes into the cake. It doesn't have to be like super cold, but I just don't want it room temp is what I'm saying. All right, now I am going to use a stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer at this point, use a hand mixer. Like I said, Hamilton Beach one is about $12 at my local Walmart. I have a room temperature stick of butter that is going into my mixer. Save your butter packets. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. We're going to use those for something. Okay, so this just needs like maybe 30 seconds of beating the stick of butter on a low to medium speed. Okay, and in goes 1 cup, or in other words, you're seeing 2 half cups of sugar. Now this does need to beat at a medium to high-ish speed for about 2 minutes. This is the reason why you really need beaters. This would be really hard to do just by hand. I have nothing but respect for all those amazing cooks who made wonderful cakes well before electric tools, because it must have been really hard. Every 30 seconds or so during that 2-minute period, I am going to scrape down my bowl and my beater, my attachment, just so I make sure everything is getting evenly incorporated. This is aerating our butter and our sugar mix. It's going to help our cake to be as light and fluffy as possible. If you don't do this step, if you just mix it, your cake is going to be, it's not going to be as fluffy. It's going to be a lot denser. And that doesn't mean it's going to be bad, but these are the kind of things that take a good cake and elevate it to being a great cake. Okay, and now I'm going to take a teaspoon of my vanilla bean paste, or your vanilla. And I'm also going to add in, one at a time, 2 of my room temperature eggs. Now this can be done on low speed. Okay, now we're going to add in our dry ingredients. So I have 2 cups of flour that I've put into a separate bowl. I'm also adding in 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and I'm adding in about, really just a pinch, like seriously, just a pinch of salt. This isn't going to make our cake salty. This little bit of salt, all that it does is it enhances the sweetness of sweet things. Okay, so you could just use a spoon to mix those dry ingredients together. I like to use a whisk, and that is because the level of aeration, the air that you're going to be adding into the flour, as well as breaking up any flour clumps, it would just take you forever to do that with just a spoon. So you could also use a fork, but you can get a wire whisk at most dollar stores, and so it's just a great tool to have in the kitchen. It will really make a big difference. Again, this is one of those things that takes a cake from being average to being great. It's also why a lot of the box cake mixes are so nice and light. It's because they put chemicals in their mixes that kind of help the cake to have that aerated feel without you actually having to have whisked the flour. And so you don't really need those chemicals. You can do this. So this is just going to make sure that our cake layer of our cake is super light and fluffy. Okay, now we are going to start to add our flour mix to our wet ingredients in our mixer. Doing about a third. I'm just eyeballing it, but I'm doing about a third of my flour mix. Now I do want to do that on low speed. I don't want flour going everywhere, and also I don't want to overwork my flour, because we've talked about what happens before when flour gets overworked. It develops gluten, and that's definitely not what we want. We don't want a tough cake. That's gluten buildup is what gives bread its structure. This cake doesn't need that structure. Okay, after that's barely mixed, we're going to add 1/3 of a cup of cold milk, or room temperature milk, really is fine. Mine was closer to cold than room temperature. Add our next 1/3 of a cup of flour. So that was 2/3. As you see, mixer is on low. I'm not getting flour everywhere, and I'm also not overworking my gluten. I'm adding my second third of a cup of milk. So in other words, 2/3 of a cup of milk in this cake batter in total. And now we go in with our final third of flour. In most cases, most cakes, when you're alternating your dry and your wet ingredients, your dry ingredient is going to go in first, and it's going to be the last one to go into. And that's what's happening here. So we've finished off mixing with our dry ingredient of our flour mix. Okay, once our cake batter is just combined, just mixed, I used my wrappers from my butter to wipe all around the bottom and the sides of my 9-inch springform cake pans. And then over the sink, I sprinkled a light dusting of flour over them, shaking it out and dumping out any excess. So it's just the finest little dusting of flour that remains on these pans. These are already nonstick pans, and this might not even be a necessary step, but it's just that little extra insurance that your cakes will not stick to the pan. All right, and now you will see the value of the offset spatula. Like I said, you can buy plastic ones online for like $1. But they really come in handy because the leveling effect that you can get with these, and I just eyeballed it. You don't have to, believe me, you do not need to use a scale or anything like that. We're not trying to be a professional bakery. You can totally eyeball this, but you can see it really gave a smooth, more leveled finish that it would be hard to get that with just a spoon, especially since it's a very thick batter. Next comes our second layer, which is the cream cheese layer. Now try to dollop this in small dollops. And we're going to, again, eyeball this and try to divide it half and half between the two cakes. Move it slowly because we want to disturb as little as possible our first cake layer. All right, next will come our berries layer. Now you can use any berries that you like. You will not typically see me using strawberries just because, unfortunately, especially in the United States, the chemicals used for strawberries, like the pesticides, are terrible. I happen to get these from somebody who I trust, and I typically try to use a mix of berries. So I usually call this my triple berry coffee cake. But today I only had blackberries and strawberries. So just put that over the top. Another thing you can do is you can add a little bit of the blackberry preserves that you saw there, just in tiny dollops if you wanted. And then lastly, that streusel topping that we made, we'll divide that evenly, more or less eyeballing it, between our two cakes. This is going to go into the oven now for about 70 minutes. My cakes take 70 minutes. Keep in mind, all ovens are different. Yours might be stronger. It also depends on how long you let your oven preheat. I let mine preheat for like an hour. So that's really good. Mine took about exactly 70 minutes. Also, for the last 2 minutes of cooking, I turned on the broiler function. So that really helped crisp up my streusel layer, and it made it buttery, soft, flaky, crispy, absolutely delicious. You have a lot of different layers going on here. You have the streusel layer, which is buttery and flaky. You have your fresh fruit layer. You have, and if you decided to use little tiny drops of the preserves or maybe like little jam, there's that. Then you have the cream cheese layer, which is very rich and creamy, obviously cream cheese, but then it also has that little bright, fresh zest in it. And then on the bottom, you have your cake layer. So you have a lot of different layers, different textures going on. As I've always said, that's something that processed food struggles to do, is to create multiple textures in one thing. And so that's why this cake tastes so superior to most bakery coffee cakes, or something that you can buy like in a grocery store. Now, as you noticed, most of this effort, it really didn't take me any more time than what I would have spent anyway, because I made a coffee cake for my own household, but then pretty much everything was done in the same bowl. So it's not like making batter for 2 cakes took me longer than it would to make batter and a cake for just 1 cake, right? It certainly didn't take more baking time. So, this is an example of economies of scale. When one person has the ability to do something and they can do it for themselves and double up on that effort, and make life easy for somebody else. I mean, isn't that just such a great thing? And that's the beauty of understanding how to cook. Because unlike, let's say, cleaning, cleaning doesn't have um, that that benefit, that feature, because I can clean my room and it would have no bearing on your room in another part of the house or in another house. I could cut my grass and it's not gonna, and if I also cut your grass, it's just double the time. But if I make dinner for 8 people, I actually, in most cases, depending on what we're cooking, in most cases, I don't need to double my time to cook dinner for 8 people as opposed to 4 people or even 2 people. It really can, you can make food as almost as quickly for 8 as you can for 2. And this is why I feel that cooking is such an important skill. It may not be quite as important to the household as cleaning. And I know that that's probably a surprise to a lot of people. I know a lot of the TradCon grifter channels, they show a lot of cooking because cooking is more appealing to the eye. But cleaning is actually far more important. That doesn't mean that cooking is not important. And I will encourage anybody to make this cake, or it doesn't even have to be this cake. Make something for somebody else using the economies of scale. So, in other words, something that you were going to make anyway, make it for yourself, make it for your household, and then make something for somebody else. And do it without any plan of reciprocation. They don't have to pay you, they don't have to do anything. You just do it once. It doesn't have to be something that you make a habit of, make a routine of. But I just want you to get into that mindset of economies of scale. Um, Doing things for multiple people can be as quick and easy as doing it for 1 or for 2. Something to think about. I really hope that you will try this cake. It is so, so good. And now I have one for my own household and I have one for Karina's household. And so her family will each get a nice slice of coffee cake with ice cream for their dessert. And then in the morning, if Hector needs it, the children have a breakfast or they have something for their afternoon snack. Take care.